Men don't lose their edge because they get older. They lose it when they stop choosing themselves. Age just gets blamed for it. Men blame age because it's convenient. It saves them from admitting the truth. The edge wasn't taken from you. You traded it for comfort, for stability, for approval. You made the exchange quietly, one decision at a time, until you woke up one day and couldn't remember who you used to be. Age is the perfect alibi. It's external, inevitable, beyond your control, but the truth sits deeper. The man you were at 25 didn't disappear because you turned 38. He disappeared because you stopped making the choices he would have made. You started negotiating with yourself, compromising on things you said you wouldn't, accepting situations you once would have walked away from. And now you're wondering why everything feels muted, why you don't feel dangerous anymore, why the intensity is gone. It's not the years, it's the deals you made along the way. The myth of the early peak history doesn't support the story that men decline with age. Marcus Aurelius wrote, Meditations, in his 50s while leading an empire. Miyamoto Musashi fought his greatest duels after 40. Machiavelli wrote The Prince at 44, after losing everything. These men weren't coasting on youthful energy. They were sharpened by time, pressure, and clarity. The difference wasn't their age. It was that they never stopped choosing hard over easy, truth over comfort, direction over acceptance. You look at older men who still carry weight in a room and assume they're exceptions. They're not. They just never traded their edge for peace. They refused the slow compromise most men accept without even noticing. The edge isn't aggression. It's not bravado or confidence or walking into rooms like you own them. That's performance. The edge is something quieter. It's clarity. The ability to see what's happening without self-deception. To know what you think without needing someone else to validate it first. It's self-respect, not the kind you announce. The kind that shows up when you're alone and no one's watching. When you do what you said you'd do, even though it's inconvenient. When you speak truth, even though it costs you something. It's the willingness to disappoint. To let people be upset with you, to choose your own direction even when it creates friction. Most men lose this early. They learn that smoothness is rewarded, that agreeability gets promoted, that keeping everyone comfortable is the safest path. So they sand down their edges. They stop saying what they actually think. They stop pursuing what they actually want. And they convince themselves this is maturity. It isn't. It's erosion. You didn't lose your edge in one dramatic moment. You gave it up in 1,000 small exchanges. You chose safety over truth when it mattered. Told yourself it was strategic. Told yourself you were being smart. But what you were really doing was learning to live smaller. You chose approval over direction, stopped making decisions that might upset people, started managing everyone's comfort except your own. You thought this was responsibility. It wasn't. It was cowardice disguised as consideration. You chose stability over intensity, built a life so predictable that nothing in it challenges you anymore. No risk, no friction, no edge, just the same complaints, the same quiet resentment that nothing feels alive. You avoided hard conversations, let problems sit because addressing them felt uncomfortable, told yourself you were keeping the peace. What you were actually doing was teaching yourself that your own standards don't matter. Every time you let something slide that shouldn't have slid, you weakened. Every time you said yes when you meant no, you diminished. Every time you chose comfort over what you knew was right, you lost a piece of what made you sharp. And now you wonder why you feel dull. Men love to blame responsibility for their decline. The job, the family, the mortgage. As if having obligations automatically strips you of your edge. It doesn't. Responsibility without ownership drains you. When you're carrying weight you didn't choose, doing work you don't respect, living a life you're just managing instead of directing. That's what kills men, not the responsibility itself, the absence of agency within it. Responsibility with ownership sharpens you. When you're building something that matters to you, when you're leading from a place of clarity instead of obligation, when the weight you carry is yours, chosen deliberately, aligned with who you actually are. That doesn't drain men, it focuses them. Look at men who are still sharp at 50. They're not the ones with fewer responsibilities. They're the ones who took full ownership of what they were building, who refused to live on autopilot, who stayed engaged with their own lives instead of drifting through them. The difference isn't how much they carry, it's whether they're carrying their own weight or someone else's expectations. Losing your edge doesn't announce itself. There's no moment where you wake up and realize it's gone. It happens gradually. Your thinking becomes predictable. You stop questioning your own patterns. Start repeating the same conversations, same complaints, same explanations for why things are the way they are. Your emotional range narrows. You stop feeling things intensely, not because you're more controlled, because you've learned to numb yourself to avoid discomfort. You become cautious in ways you don't even recognize, avoiding situations where you might fail, relationships where you might be rejected, challenges where the outcome isn't guaranteed. You tell yourself you're being smart. What you're actually being is safe. And safety, when chosen over truth, makes men soft. Resentment builds quietly. You start blaming circumstances, the economy, your partner, your boss, the system. Anything except the fact that you stopped choosing yourself years ago. You live in a controlled loop. Wake up, go through motions, distract yourself, sleep. Nothing in your day requires you to be sharp, so you aren't. The edge doesn't disappear because of age. It disappears because you stopped using it. This isn't about motivation. Reading the right book won't fix it. Watching the right video won't restore what you traded away. Confidence tricks, morning routines, cold showers, none of that addresses the core issue. You lost your edge when you stopped respecting yourself. When you started betraying your own standards to keep things smooth. When you let other people's comfort matter more than your own integrity. Getting it back doesn't require some dramatic transformation. It requires making different choices. Small ones, irreversible ones. Saying what you actually think in a conversation where it's easier to stay quiet. Walking away from a situation you've been tolerating because you thought you had to. Doing the thing you said you'd do even though every part of you wants to postpone it. Choosing truth over comfort when the moment arrives. Not because you're trying to prove something, because you're done negotiating with yourself. The edge returns when you stop asking permission, when you stop waiting for the right time, the right feeling, the right circumstances, when you make decisions from clarity instead of fear, when you're willing to disappoint people in service of what's actually true. This doesn't happen all at once. You don't wake up one morning with your edge fully restored, but you start noticing something shift. Conversations feel different. You're not managing them anymore. You're directing them. Decisions come faster, not because you're impulsive, because you're no longer second-guessing what you already know. You feel sharper, not louder, not more aggressive, just clearer. More aligned with what you actually think instead of what you've been conditioned to perform. People notice, not because you changed how you present yourself, but because you stopped performing entirely. You're just present, solid, unmoved by approval or disapproval. That's the edge. Not dominance, not control, just the quiet, unshakable sense that you're no longer negotiating with reality. You're responding to it from a place of internal authority. You know what you've been avoiding, the conversation you haven't had, the standard you've been ignoring, the compromise you keep making even though it's costing you. You know what choosing yourself would look like. You just haven't been willing to do it. Because it's uncomfortable, because it creates friction, because it means disappointing someone. But the alternative is staying where you are. Blaming age for what's actually a failure of self-respect. Wondering why you feel dull when you've spent years sanding yourself down. The edge doesn't disappear with age. It disappears the moment you stop respecting yourself. And it returns the moment you start again.